Now I'll show you how to make your About and Contact page. Just like with other pages, I'm starting with the home page. I'm going to save as a new page because the header and footer will stay as they are, and then I'll just empty out the middle section and add my About and Contact information. So starting with index.html, I save as contact.html, and in the middle section I take all of these thumbnails and empty them out, leaving just an empty container div. So I have my container within section. Within this, I'll add a contact form and some general information about me, just a short bio. Here's a rough mock-up of what I want the page to look like. I'll have a contact form on the left and then my bio on the right with a picture. So within my container, I'm going to create two divs, one to hold the contact form and one to hold my about info. So here I am in Dreamweaver. My cursor is inside my container div. I'm going to insert a div at this insertion point. I'm just calling it form. It'll hold my contact form. And right after the form div, I insert another one called about. Now both of these will be sitting side by side. So since my container is 1000 pixels wide, as we can see here, each of these divs can be about 400 pixels wide. So I'll add some selectors for them. I click inside my form div, add a selector. It says .container #form. I can simplify the selector by removing the .container. And then I'll do the same for the about div. Notice here I'm using IDs, not classes, because there's only one form and only one about div on my entire website. So there's no need to use a class. We use a class when there's more than one element that is sharing the same properties. These are pretty unique, so I just give them IDs of their own. So under form, I'm going to set the width to about 400 pixels and set it to float to the left. Under about, I'll do the same. And I'll give it a left margin of about 25 pixels. That's going to be the space between them. And once I add the contact form and the about text, I can tweak the margin. So let's add the contact form first. There are many websites that offer you contact forms that you can place into your website. Quite a few of them are free or have free options, which usually are pretty limited, but for our purpose they will work. So I'm using a site called contactor.com. So you can go ahead and create a free account here. The sign up form is very simple. Once you sign up, you receive an email with a link to activate your Contactor account. Once you activate your account and log in, you will see this. It's an extremely simple website And if you want to use their form as it is, you just need to copy and paste this into your website code. But I'm going to go ahead and customize the colors. I want to use this color as my form background. So I paste my code from Photoshop here. I'm going to change my text color to white, so all my labels appear in white text. I can go ahead and copy this code, go over to Dreamweaver, and I need to paste this code inside my form div. But I need to be very careful not to paste it in the design view, because pasting code into design view is not going to serve us in any way. Dreamweaver will not know what to do with it and will not know that it's code. So we always paste our code in the code section. Here's my form div. I'm going to delete what's already in here. Now I have an empty form div, just an opening and a closing tag. My cursor is right in between. And now I can go and paste my code here. Now when I refresh, I don't see anything in the design view. But if I switch to live view, I see my contact form. Built into the form, they even have a device to make sure that this is a human being and not a program that is just spamming people by submitting forms on their websites. And they do that, as you've noticed on many websites, by placing an image and then asking the user to enter what they see in the image. This is something that only humans can do. Computer programs are not good at doing this. So this way they try to limit the amount of spam that you get through your form. Now I'm ready to fill up the About section. I'll go back to Design View just for now. In here, I'm going to have a profile picture and some dummy text for now, which I'll eventually replace with my About text. So once again, I'm deleting this. I'm going to select and copy the dummy text. So I want to style this text to match the design of my website. And this is in my About div. So in my CSS designer, I click on the selector for the About div, go over to the text properties, and use the font family that I have been using for the rest of my website. I'll also change the color and set the weight I'm setting my font size to 16 pixels. You can play with these values and then decide what you want to do with your form. The last thing that remains for this page is to add my picture in. So in my About section, I'm just going to place my cursor right at the beginning. So I go to Insert Image, make sure I'm in my site root, go to Images, and choose my picture. Now looking at my Photoshop mockup, I want the picture to have the text wrap around it and the picture to be aligned on the left. I'm going to select this picture. Under Properties, I'll give it an ID. This is my profile picture, and then I'll go and add a selector for it. I can keep the selector really simple since there's only one profile element on my whole website. And then in my layout properties, I'll set it to float left. Now the text wraps around it. But notice that the text sticks to the image. I would like some space here. So I'll add a right margin of about 10 pixels. Now I have some room around my image. The other thing I want my image to be a circle. And you'll notice that I inserted a square image. I'm going to show you how to round out the corners of an image using CSS instead of having to do it in Photoshop. So here's how. For my profile picture, under CSS, I go into the border properties, and border radius is one way I can get rounded corners. If I set my border radius in pixels and link it to all four corners, I can get rounded corners like this. But if I want my whole image to be a circle, so if you start with a square image, set the border radius to 50%, then the borders will be so rounded that the image will look like a circle. So going back to border, I'm going to set the shorthand to 50%, and that rounds out the border so much that my image starts to look like a circle. Now I'll save all. So here's my contact page. It's shaping up. I could push it to the right a little bit, but I want to test out my contact form and see if it works. Now when I first created my account on Contactor, I used my email address as the account email. So now if I fill out and submit this form, I should get an email at my email address. So I'm just going to fill this out with some placeholder information. A placeholder email address. I know this is not even real, but as long as it looks like an email address, it'll pass. And I'll enter the words that I see here and then send. It says your message has been sent successfully. I go back to my email, and there it is. This email came through, so I know that my form works. So all I need to do is align my elements so they're centered on the page. So within my container, which is 1000 pixels wide, my form div is floated all the way to the left, and my about div is also floated to the left. That's what makes them stick to the left in this way. I need to shift them to the right a bit. So I'm going to add some left margin to my form. My form is about 400 pixels wide, and so is my about info. My container is 1000 pixels wide, so I definitely have some more space I can use. I have 200 pixels of extra space. So if I want to center this whole thing, I'm going to take those 200 pixels of extra space and split them up, which means I'm going to add a 100 pixel left margin to my form. So I go to my form div, add a left margin of 100 pixels. and now everything is centered. I'm almost done with my contact page. I want to add a little bit of a calling at the end of my text. Now I want this text to be in bold, and I've already downloaded the bold version of my web font. So I can just select this text, set it to bold, so by setting it to bold, the browser automatically picks up the heavier weight of this Lato font that I had downloaded. I'm thinking I might change my profile text to the light version of Lato. So under my About div, I go into the text properties and set my weight to 300. 300 was the weight of my light version of Lato. And there you have it. And now my About and Contact page is done.